Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, the host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show and thanks for listening. Before I introduce today's guest, I just want to take a moment to invite all you dads who are listening right now and who are ready to start taking your health and fitness back and becoming the best dads and the best men you can be. I invite you to join our brotherhood. And the best way to do that right now is to head over to Facebook and apply to our private group, which is the Fit Dad Base Camp. So that's facebook.com/groups/Fit Dad Base Camp. So my guest today, his name is Nate Lind. He's a very successful entrepreneur. He's had 23 brands that have sold more than $1 million, and he runs the Legends Mastermind Program, which is a community of entrepreneurs and business people that establishes a culture of progress that really doesn't happen in other places in e-commerce. And so Nate and I were introduced recently, and I started reading about his story and his mission, and I knew he was somebody that I really wanted to talk with. And so one of the things that fascinates me about his story is that it's that of struggle. He struggled with his health, almost dying at one point. He struggled with his weight, his confidence, and at one point he had even contemplated suicide. And so, he's taken a lot of these past failures and struggles to become incredibly successful in business. He's got a wonderful family life, and he's doing work that impacts a lot of people on deep and profound levels. So, Nate, I'm very happy to have you here. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for having me, Stephen. It's funny because when any time that someone kind of announces me, I think I've got, and I bet many of your listeners have this too. Is like you kind of have this sense of, well, it's still not enough, or I still didn't do good enough, or I'm not, I didn't do that well enough. And it's funny. It's just something that comes up for me when people do introductions, and I've had that conversation with a couple other folks that like it's never enough. Well, God damn it, when will it be enough?
Yep. So yeah, I'd love to hear your backstory, just a little bit about yourself and how you grew up and how you got to be, where you are today and what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm the youngest of six. My dad was a colonel in the Army. It was pretty much lifelong in the Army, and my mom was a homemaker. I've got two older brothers and three older sisters, and was born in kind of the backwoods area of rural Kansas, south of Wichita. It's a little town called Arkansas City, spelt like Arkansas City. And did a bunch of moving around growing up. I spent some time in the Washington D.C. area. My dad was working at the Pentagon. And Stephen, I understand you're in Frederick, so I spent a lot of time, in that area and Falls Church and Fairfax County and that sort of stuff. And that was mostly through elementary. Then I spent a little bit of time in St. Louis in middle school, and then ended up back in Kansas. As my dad retired, we went. So I spent all this time in these big cities, and now I'm a city boy back in rural Kansas. And I never quite connected, never quite belonged at any of those places. Like every time I moved, I had to kind of create a whole new band of brothers for myself, my new sandlot, so to speak. And that was just something that I always did growing up, and I kept doing that. I did that when I went to college, did that after college, did that, doing, in various businesses. Went through a period of time in my 20s. I sold a bunch of real estate, flipped a bunch of houses. I got my teeth smashed in 2008 when the housing crisis went crazy. And fortunately, I didn't lose my pants. I lost my shirt, but I didn't lose my pants. So I still have my pants and my undies on, but was on the skins team, so to speak, during a period of time. I actually sucked it back up and went back to work because there was a moment in 2008 where I hadn't seen any income for about 8 months actually. And my wife came down. She just, being supportive and loving, she asked me how my day went, and I snapped at her. I'd let all that pent up frustration and anger and irritation boil over and focused it at her. And I was super, super shameful of that. But it did give me the moment to recognize that, that inner struggle and turmoil I was going through because I wasn't providing for my family, which is just, a deep need for me and men all across the world. We all feel that. We were put, been on this earth for millions of years, and we were, hunters and gatherers, and we provided. That hasn't changed any. Society has changed around us, but we still, have a deep need to provide for those around us. And that was really acute for me. So I went and I got a job. A buddy of mine helped me get an interview at E-Trade and Financial down in the DC area. And I went, did an interview, and it's just been like 6 years since I'd had a job. I was so mortified. I felt like such a failure. But something that helped me get through it was I went back and reread Rich Dad Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki, and he talked about the time that he went into the military and how he used that to teach himself leadership, or to learn leadership skills, management skills, and that sort of stuff. So I made it okay for myself by thinking along those lines. So I did that for a couple of years. Moved around to a couple of different financial entities, and I actually did really well at it. When you are a go-getter and you take that entrepreneurial spirit, entrepreneurial mind into the workforce, you will kick the ass of all of your competition, like everybody else that you're working with. So I went from making, I want to say it was like $60,000 a year at E-Trade to making $120,000 a year at Bank of America in about a 2-year time period. So I doubled my income in 2 years. And also eliminated my commute. And that's something else that I struggle with too, because the DC area, the traffic there is horrible. So in the beginning, I was commuting like an hour and a half each way. So at the time I lived, further out in the suburbs. And so I was spending a ton of time not making much in the way of money. I mean, I was used to getting, $150,000 checks, like, flipping houses. And I'd saved some money, but, had taken some losses. And I'm the kind of guy that when I put money in savings, I treat it as if it's not there. Like, I'll live without it. So when income was not coming in and savings is starting to go out, then, that really starts to get me twitching. But yeah, so I did that for a couple of years and kind of suffered through that failure as an entrepreneur. And I was a depressed shit of a human being, according to my wife many years later, who was lovingly not willing to just rail me at the time, but recognized that the entrepreneurial, ambitious, loving man that she fell in love with was not the same guy. And quite frankly, we really never are the same guys. We are always changing. So, that continues as struggles in marriages too, which I can talk about those evolutions. You start to have a whole lot of success, and then your ego starts to get kind of big, and then all of a sudden you're not the same man that your wife married. So it doesn't really matter what we try to do. We're always changing. So it's just working through those shifts. So in 2011, I had the opportunity to and the motivation to start doing something entrepreneurial again. And I found, e-commerce and online marketing and stuff. And there was a book I read called The Millionaire Fastlane by DeMarco. And it was really fascinating the way that he broke down all of the financial experts out there, like Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey's, basically how they're full of shit. And that if you're just working a 9-to-5 and you're putting, 10, 20, 30% of your income away, hoping to have a really nice cushy retirement, there's probably some market correction or some disaster that's going to happen almost inevitably during your span of accumulating that savings that may simply wipe it out. And we've seen that happen a couple of times now. The housing crisis in 2008, the savings and loan crisis in the late 80s, early 90s, so on and so forth. Cyclical, it keeps going back. And there's a lot of people I know, friends of mine, that are more keen on economics than I am, that predict there's still something coming. That we're at all-time highs, and that something's going to bust in the next couple of years. So I really like the idea of the scale of online sales as opposed to, like, in real estate, it's individual transactions that are the magnitude of those is really big. But online sales, you have the opportunity to sell a little bit, a small dollar amount to a lot of people. And I like the diversification of that, because I felt like in real estate, I was too focused on the Northern Virginia area. And when that housing market busted, I was pretty much left without a job. So that's what got me into doing e-commerce.
Huh. Okay. So it's funny you mentioned MJ DeMarco's book, because I had to order that and read it when it first came out. And I had a podcast years ago for a different website. It was a personal growth website, and it was a crappy low budget. I didn't do a great job at it, but I got MJ DeMarco on the phone, and we had a great conversation in the philosophy of, what he teaches and how everything that we learn is backwards. And I feel so strongly that, what we're taught in school, get good grades, go to college, do well, get a good job, start at the bottom, work your way up the ladder, work to 65 or 70, retire with a gold watch and die. It's completely backwards. It's fucked up. And I just feel so strongly about that.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I mean,
we are robots, and we were given a programming. We were talking about RPGs, before the podcast. So we were given this program like non-player characters, NPCs, and hopefully there's some of your audience plays video games too and knows what the fuck I'm talking about.
They do.
So we essentially are NPCs, and we're given this programming to do. And at some point in time, we either choose to wake up or we find somebody else that is awoken and they can help pull us out of this dream. And it's really not even a dream. It's more of a fucking nightmare, to be honest with you. Like, to just, go through, all right, yeah, go to school, get a degree, get a job, get married, have kid 1, a couple more years later, have kid 2, maybe have, kid, a half a kid or a full kid a little bit later, go through your midlife crisis in your 30s, lose your wife, lose your kids, buy a Corvette, go through all those problems, and then kind of keep working through to your right. You get into your 60s or 70s, you've got a gold watch, and then you're dead, and then you've got one line on your tombstone to forever be remembered by: loving father, and maybe not so much a loving spouse, but whatever. Kind of depends on what you make of it at that point in time. That is, it sure sounds like a nightmare to me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it reminds me of something that I read of yours that said at one point you had been focusing so much on taking care of your family financially that you didn't actually spend the time enjoying them, and that they didn't want just a provider, they wanted you. Yep,
absolutely. I could never have gotten a more stronger message about that when my wife took my children to Texas, and I didn't know if I'd ever see them again. They, she just had enough, and it's so hard because we do all of this like subconsciously, like we're in robot mode, and we've been programmed to do this. Like, we've been trained to do this, like all our lives. Like, okay, we need to, work our asses off. We need to work harder than the next guy. We need to, make more money than the next guy. We need to provide, we need to do all this. Well, in order to do all that, it becomes harder and harder once you have a family and kids. So you're trying to compete with single guys that are able to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, or even older divorced guys who don't have, their kids are grown up or whatever, and they're working. When you're a family man and have a significant other or have a spouse, and you're trying to compete with them as well as maintain a healthy family balance, which is damn near impossible. And it's still a challenge for me, even though I've done a really, really good job over the last year and a half or so to force vacations. We bought a timeshare, and so twice a year I go, we spend a week there. I've got an hour worth of work in the morning and an hour worth of work in the evening, and I turn my phone off. I'm really conscious now to make sure when I take my wife out on a date, last time I didn't even bring my phone. I left my phone at home. I said, "Sweetie, you've got the emergency line if we need to talk to." I actually have my brother's son is living with us right now. He was watching the kids. He's only 19, so he's kind of a boomerang, but he boomeranged to us instead of his dad because his dad's down in Puerto Rico. So I just let her know that, okay, if we need anything, you're going to have to call. She's like, "Well, what if I need you?" I told her, "Sweetie, all you'll have to do is reach out and touch me." And I could see her light up about that. So making sure, if there's anybody out there that's listening, if you have any kind of rockiness in your relationship, the first and the best thing you can do is to take your spouse out on a date and to make sure that she sees you don't have your phone with you. Like, leave it in your car when you go into the restaurant. Don't check your fucking fantasy scores. Don't check in on Facebook. Leave that shit alone for an hour and a half. God. Don't ask me how I know. Don't have your wife take your kids to Texas and you not know when the hell they'll come back or if they will.
Yeah. I mean, is that around the time that you were I know you were struggling, and I've read it, and I don't know if you want to get into it here, but you had one point were contemplating taking your own life. Was that around that time frame when she left?
That
Or is
was
that
actually afterwards.
Okay.
So I went through my own kind of personal turmoil in 2015, and it was business related. And again, it's all about providing. Like when my ability to provide it seemed like it was stripped from me. We were selling a whole bunch of products, and we were having some problems with our infrastructure, and there's a whole montage of stuff that went on that went from us looking like we were going to make a whole lot of money to losing a whole lot of money. And it really bothered me because at that point, not only was I responsible for providing for my family as an entrepreneur, I'm providing for all of my employees' families. So the compounding effect of it was that I wasn't sure that I would be able to provide for my family. Wasn't sure that I'd be able to provide for my employees' families. Wasn't sure what impact that might have on the investors in the company. Wasn't sure, what impact that would happen all around. And I was letting it bother me so much that it was a moment. I don't want to say that I was so traumatic that I'm sitting in a room, at night by myself holding a gun to my head. But there was a moment where I was driving home. At this point in time, I was living in New Mexico, and in Albuquerque, there's this giant mesa that Rio Rancho sits on, and on the west side of it, there's these big bluffs. And I was just thinking to myself, what would the world be like without me? Like if I just drove off the edge. And it was just a moment of thought, but it was so scary that I would go that far. And what brought me back to was just something that it still brings tears to my eyes thinking about. It's my boys. What would their life look like not having a dad? And just going through that thinking, that was the hardest thing for me to then even admit that, yeah, I had this dark moment, and I could have easily driven off the cliff. It's literally right off the side of the road. But I'm so much more important than how much money I bring into my family. So what if we had to declare bankruptcy? So what if other people lost some money? So what if some of my employees had to find a new job? We're all resilient creatures. We're going to figure it out one way or another. Is it optimal? No. But is it something worth ending my life over? Absolutely not. And if there's anybody out there that has ever felt like they are 100%, their value is based on like what they're bringing home or what they're contributing to others, I would implore you to think about the things in life that are the most important, and it's your relationships. It's your family, it's your friends, and it's any relationship that you build and that you put energy into. And this was such a strong feeling for me, and I didn't understand like what the mechanics were, like what the psychology was that was at play for a while. And that ate at me. Like I'm a very intellectual guy. I want to know, I want to understand, I want to research and educate myself. So I spent a ton of time researching and just trying to understand, like reading books and reading reading philosophy and reading just these different perspectives that help me understand what that feeling is. And that's kind of where I really started to recognize that there's this deeper world of masculinity and of what's right and wrong about masculinity, of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a provider, a protector, and why I would have those feelings. Because as I've shared this more and more, people have reached out to me expressing their own turmoils, their own struggles with this as well. And it seems to me that there is this common sense of dread that men in the world have today that ties like a score on a video game. Your score is how much you're providing, your status, your what money you're bringing, the bacon you're bringing home. And if there's an interruption to that, then it causes severe depression, the sense to isolate oneself, that because no one else could be feeling this way, this is only me. Total bullshit. We all feel that. And as a successful entrepreneur, I'm here to say I felt that when I was working a 9-to-5 job. I felt that when I was a successful entrepreneur. I felt that when I was a failed entrepreneur. And now we see, just in the last couple of years, suicides from people that are, what we would think are some of the most successful, influential, and happy people. Anthony Bourdain on the freaking Food Network and Travel Channel should have everything going for him in his life. Killed himself. Who was the Lincoln Park guy? Super successful. Killed himself. Yeah, Chester. And the list goes on. Like, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. It's never enough. It doesn't matter how hard you're working. It's probably too much. None of that stuff matters. So, I've always felt this desire to keep doing more to provide for my family, mostly because I recognized that in my early teens, I think I was like 12 or 13, my parents declared bankruptcy. And I remember thinking to myself, well, are we going to have a house? Like, how are we going to get, like, do we get to keep our car? And, it ended up just being like a restructuring. Like, it wasn't like the full on, like, I think it's like chapter 7. It was like a chapter 13. So it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just a reorganization. But as a 12-year-old, I didn't know. Like, my only context of bankruptcy was you lose it all. And, that's absolutely not true at all. Bankruptcy is just a tool to it's just a tool. You can use that tool in whatever way you see fit. And I by no means have any judgment, because I've been on the edge of bankruptcy more times than I wish to admit. And it's also interesting to find out some of the most successful people in the world have gone bankrupt. Walt Disney went bankrupt 3 times. Can you believe that? I had no idea until I was watching some PBS documentary. So this whole view of how, we as men, we have to provide for our families, and that our only value, our morale is predicated on that alone, is bullshit. Whether we're working for somebody or we're employing people, it doesn't matter. That feeling never goes away.
Yeah, I mean, some powerful stuff there. And, one of the things you said reminded me of exactly how I feel. Is I think about, because I have 2 daughters, 13 and 10, and I think about what life would be like if I wasn't here. So, I've never been around depression or anyone suicidal, but I'm terrified of dying. Not the pain of dying or anything like that. It's just not being here, because what would life be like if I wasn't here? So, that really hit home with me.
I think the statistics are pretty gnarly. It's like half of men have contemplated suicide at some point in time in their life. The suicide statistics are dreadful. I think it's 3 out of 4 or 4, and it's 4 out of 5 suicides are men. The majority of them are white males from 32 to 42. So the middle-aged white guy who, the majority of society looks at as the most privileged. We're now like we get, for middle-aged white guys, and I am one, and certainly I've had, opportunity that has allowed me to get to where I am that other demographics, haven't. Well, I'm sorry. I was born white in America and a man. I can't change that. So stop fucking telling me that I'm bad. All right? We're not. And the consequence of that, I'm sure there's a number of reasons that go into this, but now I'm the highest demographic for killing myself and all of my peers. That's fucking unreal. So like people out there want to say I'm a bad guy because I'm a middle-aged white guy. My message to them is fuck off. I've got my own problems. You've got your own problems. I'm happy to help you with yours, but who the hell is going to help me with mine? Me. That's the only one that's going to help me. I'm helping everybody else. I'm giving all this to everybody, and I'm doing all this stuff to look good and avoiding looking bad and to be a good citizen. Well, there's no support for middle-aged white guys. There's no brotherhood for middle-aged white guys, which is why I love what you're doing, Stephen, like building a band of brothers and having that support group, because we've got nowhere to go. We have no one to talk to. If we don't do it for ourselves, no one's going to do it for us.
That's exactly right, which leads into my, something I really wanted to talk to you about, and that's the importance of a brotherhood or the importance of a tribe. And, I'm 47. I don't have, I can count friends on one hand, and I know that's the case for a lot of people. You get married, you have kids,
Mm-hmm.
you lose touch with all your buddies, and you don't have that brotherhood, right? And you feel alone and isolated. And so everything that I do now in my business is group related. And the men work together in a community, and it's so powerful. And so what I've seen in some of your businesses is the power of the tribe.
Yep.
You have a crazy success story. If you Google your name, everywhere it's the $100 million man, Nate Lind, and you've created all of these massively successful brands, but at the core of a lot of what you're doing and what you believe is the power of the tribe.
Absolutely. All of my entrepreneurial success would have been nothing if I didn't have the right people around me, the right people to look up to, people that mentored me, spending time mentoring others. And it's absolutely the single most powerful success factor for me. And I see in my world that I exist in, a lot of online businesses and online retailers and entrepreneurs, it's so lonely, it's so isolated that if you don't consciously surround yourself with others that you can relate to, because we can't have 100% truthful stories with our spouses. I'm sorry, I know it's bad for me to say, but I can't share my frustrations and my challenges, all of them. I try to share as much as I can, and I know I probably would be better to do more, but I'm not there yet. Like, to share every problem and situation with my wife, that's not going to go over great. Like, then she starts problem solving. There's that dynamic gets all funky. I can't share that with my children. I can't share that with my employees. The only people that I can share that with are other people like me, other entrepreneurs. So, and I remember when I was working for Bank of America, like the challenges that I was going through as a, kind of a mid-level vice president there, this didn't relate at that time to entrepreneurs. It didn't relate to my wife. I didn't relate to my children, my family, some of my friends. And you're right. When I got married, I lost a lot of my social life. And it's not because I just chose to leave all my friends. I married my best friend. So I spent a lot of time with her, love her to death. We go do, riding motorcycles together, adventures, vacations, and great love, and a great love partner too. So I liked doing that. And then we had kids, and, so then I'm spending time with the kids. So I lost a ton of my social life, and that has a huge, huge negative impact on because of this one thing. You don't have anybody around you that can support you and call you on your shit. So that part by itself is worth its weight in gold. And I've tried a couple of different times to create different tribes, and I'm just a tribe builder, whether I like it or not. And so I've had a lot of success at doing it. And as I keep changing and I keep growing, so does my tribe. And sometimes my tribe doesn't grow with me, and I have to leave them, or they choose out. And this is something I was actually going to comment, to you, Stephen, before the event or before the podcast. Is it's okay if the tribe changes and it evolves and it morphs. What's really hard to do, and I found this as kind of like the leader of the tribe. If I'm inauthentic with myself as to where I'm headed in my journey, then I come across in like a weird or awkward or kind of like withholding version of myself to my tribe. And I've accidentally done that a time or two, probably more times than I wish to admit. But if we're just honest and authentic with ourselves and, where we are and where we're going, and recognizing that our tribe is going to grow and it's also going to pivot and it's going to move, then that I think is the best for everybody, because we don't want to all just sit in the same situation, talking about the same problems. We want to solve those problems. We want to move on to the next big problem, and doing that together as a group, that is really strong. And for my Legends Mastermind, it's for 7-figure and 8-figure and more online entrepreneurs and the ecosystem around them, like real estate and online and all that sort of stuff. And you talked about doing group. we just launched this idea of doing a group product together, like selling a product together. And we've got 35 guys in the group that are mega successful, and everyone kind of pitching in some time and some money and some effort towards this idea of a big brand. And it gets me extremely excited, also slightly terrified because things could go horribly wrong. But those I think are really great exercises to work through. So the power of the group is life, because the whole idea of the lone wolf and in surviving out there on your own, that's just some myth that John Wayne and Hollywood put out there that was real and that would work like in the Old West and in various times of of the world. But in reality, the lone wolf died. The pack thrived.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really brings to mind when you say that certain things you can't tell your wife. And I have a very supportive and loving relationship, very open. We communicate very well, but of course, there's always going to be things that for one reason or another, you're not going to be able to share. And so that's why I have this tribe, right? And it just brings to mind this guy posted something the other day in one of the private groups. He's a single father, and he just found out his high school age daughter was pregnant, and he was flipping the fuck out. So his outlet, he couldn't call his ex-wife or he didn't have a friend to call and say, "Holy shit!" It was the group, right? What would the group do? I mean, now you've got 500, and not my group. This particular group is like 560 guys or something like that, and now you've got the minds of, and chances are someone's been through something like this. Maybe we could look at it from a different point of view, talk him off the ledge, whatever it is, but he's just flipping out, and rightfully so. But that's the power of it is, when guys have these issues and they're always going to come up, you have that group, and they're not going to judge you, call you a pussy or anything like that. It's, this is life, man. And we're here to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Having that supportive network is absolutely a lifeline, because sometimes it's just a matter of talking it out. It has nothing to do with, okay, I need someone to solve this, this problem or whatever. I'm going through this struggle. It's just the act of talking about it is therapeutic. And then it gets I think about it as like this evil spirit inside of you. And then once you talk about it, it goes away. We have this judgmental side of all of us that we're constantly critical of our own, our own success, of our own challenges, of our, of how we relate to others and where we stack up. That's just a huge piece of what it means to be a man in the world today. And when you just, share some of your challenges, like it gets it out, because we're all going through the same 10 or 15 challenges. We have problems with money. We have problems with our family. We have problems with our children. We have problems with our spouse. We have problems with, with our health. It's the same damn things that all of us deal with. Whether we're making, like Chester from Linkin Park is probably making, I don't know, $100 million. They've got some of the most successful songs in history. Anthony Bourdain, he's got to have been a multi-millionaire. So whether you're making a ton of money or you're trying to grab pennies out of your sofa to pay the rent, it's still some of the same problems. And just because you have money doesn't mean you don't have money problems. I know a ton of successful people that they don't have two pennies to pinch together because their relationship with money is all out of whack. They spend too much, or they over leverage themselves. Those sorts of things, like, they're common to all of us. So, having that group to be around, and then like the kind of the category of problems to deal with, and being able to talk through and share those. Life is a school of hard knocks. You have to go through these experiences to learn for yourself. Occasionally, you can hear someone else's story and you'll take a learning lesson from it. I try to do as many of those as possible, because those tend to save me, a lot of heart, trouble, turmoil, saves me money, like that sort of stuff, when I can learn from somebody else. But it never quite has the same impact as when it's you and when it's something you're going through. That's when you really learn those lessons, because it's emotional at that point. It's not logical.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said about being inauthentic to ourselves. And guys, we have egos, right? And so when you're in a group, even a good solid group of guys, the ego, the wall is still there. So we lie to ourselves, and so it really, brought to mind, in my business, I have certain struggles, and when I'm not being authentic with myself and I'm trying to be a salesman, I'm trying to be something that I'm not, it doesn't feel good, and it portrays into every other part of my life and business. And people, they know that. If you're just doing something to check a box, they know that. So when you really honestly just can completely be truthful with yourself. And the very first podcast interview I did was with a guy named Jason McKenzie, who does a lot of work in mental health. And this guy is the most open, honest, and vulnerable guy I think I've ever talked to. He just completely lays it all out there for you. And he's a fit, good-looking guy. And so you would think that, he's going to have, a little bit of swag or ego, but he's just so humble and so real and so in tune with himself. And he puts it out there. And so he's got a podcast. He's got, he creates quite a bit of content, and it's amazing to see somebody in that space. And so, I've seen the power behind it. I still struggle with it. I know a lot of guys do as well, but really powerful stuff.
It's tough for us to share and to be vulnerable. We were not taught that. We're not conditioned. It's not natural. But when you can, it was an amazing testimonial for my group. One of the guys, we do these hot seats. So basically, it's an opportunity for you to come to the group with an obstacle or an opportunity. And in this case, the obstacle was getting more sales. And it's a very, very common thing in entrepreneurship. Obviously, sales are what feeds the engine. And so this was one individual was talking about, he's not getting the number of sales that he's looking for or that he needs. And, so the group is, troubleshooting. Like they come to his, not his rescue, but they're coming like with all these different ideas. Did you try this? Have you talked with this person? Because it's funny, like online marketing and online retail, you'd think it's maybe a little bit more like programmatic, a little bit more like computer centric than it is, but it's actually relationships. It's still like, who do you know that has this relationship that can send these sales or can do this or can do that? So, the whole group is working on kind of solving that issue. And later on that night, I was actually sitting next to that same individual and one of our big guns in the group. And this guy just numbers. It's massive. It's just amazing. And he's super humble and he's super nice and thoughtful. It's awesome. And I was listening to them talk, and he started calling so the guy, the big bear was kind of calling the guy in the hot seat, not like shamefully or anything, but it was like, hey, like, remember, it's your job to do this, 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 and this. When's the last time you've been doing that? And the guy that was in the hot seat was like, oh yeah, it's been a while. Like, you're right. I need to take this upon myself and not just delegate this to my staff. Like, when you're growing a business, there's a lot of stuff you do want to delegate, but there's certain things that sometimes you just got to roll up your sleeves and you got to jump back in. And, just kind of listening to them talk about that, it was really cool because the way that communication, broke out and the way that occurred, really, really was an impact for the guy that was in the hot seat. And I know, like, we're going to follow up with him at the next meeting to find out how things have gone. I'm following up with him. Literally last night, I'm introducing him to people that I know, like, listen, this person can help and this person can help. But regardless, with the group, because they're not all going to be able to read my mind and know how this individual's doing now, I need to report that back to everybody, because it's those successes that keeps us going. And we all have to have successes or we just peter out. Like, it can't be done. It's impossible. If we don't have those small wins, we won't keep taking the steps it takes for us to keep growing and learning and being better leaders, fathers, husbands, employers, employees, whatever that might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I did want to talk about is, a lot of guys listening, probably most of them are working, a regular 9-to-5 job, maybe have a long commute, probably don't love their jobs, maybe just grinding out a paycheck like I did for so many years and so many people do, and would love nothing more than to do something that they love, something that just fires them up inside, right? Whether that's an online business or whatever it is. And so we hear a lot about it now, right? They call it the side hustle or whatever. You have to find time in your day to make it happen, which is true. You have to carve out time to do something. So you've been there, you've done that in spades. You've done
Twice.
Yeah, I mean,
I did the side hustle when I
more-
was working for somebody full time. Twice. That's both the ways I got into being an entrepreneur. I was side hustling. I had a full time job, and then I added an extra 10 hours a week to a side hustle, and that's how. Then that eventually broke me out of the day job.
yeah, I mean, and you've not only, I mean, most people would be happy creating one brand that generated $1 million, but 23, and I mean, you're still a younger guy. I mean, 38 years old, you have a lot to go. I mean, so, you've done lots of things right. So, my question to you is, what would you tell that guy that, maybe he doesn't even know, like, what do I really, really want to do, because he's never had to think about it, right? Because you go to your job, you do your work, and you go home, right? You don't really think, well, what would really, really, really I'd love to do? And so I know one of the things that I found on one of your websites was this quiz, which kind of puts you in this archetype of, the type of person that you are, and maybe give you some ideas as far as what type of business or what, traits would be best suited for. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, like how to get started down that path of even just starting, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is what I think I'm pretty good at, and then taking it from there.
Yeah, that's actually a great that's a great idea in terms of like if I had to go back in time and start over again, what would I do? And I would definitely do do a few things differently. I would first try to I would be very critical about looking at myself and thinking about, what am I passionate about? What do I love doing that I would do whether it made me any money or not? And I've got a student that I had this conversation with not too long ago, and he loves hiking, and he loves fitness, and he loves camping and outdoors and like that sort of stuff. So I implored him to look at okay, well, how can you monetize that? Like how can you replace your day job income with that? And so we started kind of going through like what that looks like. And for me, I'm sold on online sales. Like I think between what Amazon's been up to and having sold a whole ton off of my own platforms, my own websites. Shopify, I think, is amazing what they're doing. They're bringing the opportunity for people to do a side hustle online. It's very, very scalable. It doesn't take a whole lot of work. It's certainly a whole hell of a lot easier than when I was doing real estate and I was driving downtown into DC and then trying to flip houses on the way home at night was ridiculous. So I try to find something that I am passionate about, and literally, looking at my like my spending habits. What am I spending money on? What are my friends spending money on? And just kind of recognizing like what that is. I would also I would be very inquisitive to myself as well. There's a ton of different tests that are out there. There's the PMAI, I think Carol Pearson does. It's an archetype test. There's another one. I'll get you a couple of links that you can put in the show notes on some of the different like quizzes. There's like the Myers-Briggs has ones like DISC. There's a bunch of different stuff that's like that kind of teaches you a little bit about what you're strong at. That I think is a little bit more step two. The first thing you need to know is like, what are you passionate about? For me, I'm always looking at like consumer type stuff, because the number one hobby in the world is buying shit. It's consumerism. That of anything else. Entertainment, sports, anything, like all of that is a veil to sell shit. So if you're out there and you listen to that and you're like, well, that's not true, Nate. Okay, well, okay, good luck disproving me. The reality is we need things. We want things. We're going to buy things. So I think it's important to find out economically what is it that you could be selling. Because if it's not your time, then it's your product. It's one or the other. You're either selling your time if you're coaching or teaching people, or if you're working for somebody, you're selling them your time. You're still selling them something. Or if you want to really grow and scale and grow some magnitude, I really like physical products, selling physical goods. You can do that with a side hustle, super easy. And just find something that you like to do and just dabble with it, just play with it. But you have to educate yourself. One of the things I wish I had done better is number one, I wish there was more education about how to sell online. And there's still not terribly a whole lot of it. People ask me for that all the time too, and I'm having so much fun selling it. It's hard to break away. Spend time teaching how to sell. Um, but there is some education out there, and there's a tier to start. This is I'm gonna have to do like an infographic about this because nobody else like tells it this way. But this is how it starts. The easiest way to get in is to sell something, like to drop ship something, like through Alibaba or on Shopify, like that sort of thing, or to sell something on Amazon. That's the easiest way to get started, but it's a terrible way to actually grow a business and make real money that can replace your income. The best way to do that actually is to have your own website, but to not do all the hard work. And I've done some webinars now where I've talked about like how that works. Like you need a website, you need a fulfillment company, you need a manufacturer, you need a customer service. But the beauty is there's companies who do all that. You don't have to. All you have to do is have the desire, the drive, and a little bit of seed capital. So you need to, if you're working and you don't have a pot to piss in, then keep working. Save up some money, get yourself $10,000 or $15,000. Save up some cash, and then you can launch a side hustle. That for me, I started with $25,000 in credit cards. I didn't even have cash at that point. I did have cash, but I don't like spending cash, so I just use credit. And then we invested some more money over time, and it grew into something that pays me a nice return every year. And I actually now I have like the 4-hour work week. I just report into my team and talk to my team for 1 hour a week on a Wednesday, and then I help them with emails and stuff throughout the course of the week. And that's what helped me be able to have the time to launch other businesses. So I have a business that's almost fully passive now. I didn't even recognize that I had totally taken that for granted, and it didn't even occur to me until a couple of weeks ago. I was like, holy shit, I finally have a 4-hour work week. In fact, I have more like a 2.5 or 3-hour work week, and it pays me, 6 figures a year, a good 6 figures a year. We're silly human beings. We don't even take into consideration all of the stuff that we've done well. Celebrate that stuff. Take a small victory. Pat yourself on the back. We just don't do that very well. So those are a couple of things, Stephen, I think I would do is spend a little bit of time looking at what do you actually like doing? What do you do that you're passionate about? And then the key thing is you got to figure out how to make money on it, because I've done this before too. And I think you may know some people that have done this where you work entirely out of your passion, but you're not getting compensated commensurately, and then your passion burns out. I've done that a couple of times. So it's really a 1-2 punch. You've got to figure out what you're passionate about, and you also have to figure out how is it going to support you. And then not just support you, how is it going to really enrich you? Because the more it enriches you, the more passion and fire it creates within you, and the more passion and fire you can put back into it. And that's the product. Otherwise, you're burning the candle from both ends, and you eventually get burnt out.
Yeah, and this leads right into the story of your brand, Legendary Man, and we spoke about this before we started recording. So we were introduced, and I looked you up, and everything was Legendary Man, Legendary Man. This is Nate from Legendary Man. So I said, okay. So I went, and there's a lot of moving parts on the website. It's a brand. There were beard oils. There was a whole apparel line, resources on suicide. There were all these kind of live events. Like there was a lot of stuff going on. But then I noticed that there was no recent content, like maybe almost a year old. And I'm like, well, what's going on here? Like what happened to all the content and everything? It's just kind of died off. And so, if you don't mind sharing your story of that would be good.
Yeah. Well, it's quite simple. It failed. And it was heart-wrenching, soul-crushing, but we launched that brand right before the Me Too movement. And if you're a guy out there in the world today and you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but there is a social movement where women are expressing themselves and the challenges that they've had with sexual harassment and all sorts of stuff that has taken all the headlines, and it's gone extreme. Like I think I got into a heated conversation with my wife about this the other night, and she talked about women are done with it. Women are done being raped. Women are done being sexually harassed. Women are done with like all the shit that they get. And she's like, she asked me, do you know what it feels like to be raped? I'm like, no, I haven't. She's like, well, I have. Before we got married, I was raped. And she told me that story before, and it's heart crushing as any man to find out that the love of your life has been violated by another man. And, I get it. Like, I understand what the anger is behind some of the comments from these women. But at the same time, it's tough because, there's, a lot of guys that they haven't gone over the line. Like, they didn't rape somebody. But at the same time, we get thrown into the lot of the 1, 2, 3, 4% of guys in the world. I don't know what that statistic is. I'm actually super curious now. I'll have to go research it. But we get, all of men almost, it seems like, gets thrown into the group of men that have gone to that extreme. That's, date rape someone or like, not just like a lewd joke at work, but like, you're not going to get a raise unless you suck me off. Like, that level of sexual harassment. So I understand, like, I get it now. But it's tough because that pendulum blade is swinging out there awfully far. And it's now, guys are getting accused of stuff that happened. Well, not even now, but in the beginning, guys are getting accused of stuff that happened a long time ago. But that was normal back then. Like, yeah, maybe in the last 10 years, like 15 years, 20 years, that, now I'm not speaking for the rape, but just, and I'm not speaking for, you've got to, give me a blowjob in order for you to get, to the next level. But guys find women at work, and relationships are born at work. And it takes somebody willing to take the initiative to express their interest in somebody from the physical perspective and from, whatever it is that causes that desire or that lust, and that's sticky. So how do you take out, like, are people saying now that there should be absolutely no relationships that are born from the workplace? Well, that's going to be tough because we sure spend a whole hell of a lot of time at work. And if that now is an area where there's no allowance, there's no tolerance for there to be, any kind of conversations, that lead to, dating and relationships, that doesn't benefit either gender. But I do understand, and I get the movement as it unfolds, but it's a sticky thing. So for us, launching this awareness for a broader group of guys, and expressing, being proud to be a man, couldn't have been a worse time to do that. And our sales didn't launch like what we liked. The press that we were looking at, getting, we did some live events, and we were kind of like, we were testing our message in live events, and it wasn't really warmly received. It was from some men, and I think it just needs some more time. So I think it's a classic case of the right thing at the wrong time. I think another couple of years is going to have to pass before a movement of positive masculinity can erupt from this. I think guys are still on the defensive. We're still on our heels. We're trying to figure out, okay, well, like, how do we respond to this? How can we, make some compromises? How can we, learn from the minority that fucked it up, and not taking accountability necessarily for them, but taking accountability for ourselves. We're not there yet. So I instead focused and took all of that time and money and investment and focused it on a real narrow group of entrepreneurs. And that's what became instead of Legendary Man, it grew into Legends, my mastermind.
Yeah. So you've taken, like you said, passion project, something that you felt strongly about, but, at the end of the day, it wasn't the right time. And, I know Gary Vaynerchuk says, don't be romantic about how you make your money. And so I know that's a lot of people's struggles, including mine, right? I have to feel good about how I make money. And I think it's worked to my detriment, because you get so emotionally involved, like with you with Legendary Man, but you made a business decision, right? You shut it down. You got your ass handed to you. You lost a ton of money, and you moved on. Yep.
And fortunately, I was able to reuse some of it, so it wasn't like a total loss. It gave me the information and the spirit to reboot into version 2.0. And That's what most businesses are about. It's one, and it's what life's about. I mean, honestly, we learn from trial and error. We try something and we fuck it up, and then we learn, okay, don't do it that way. Doesn't mean don't do it, just don't do it that way, and try it a little bit differently. So, being courageous enough to admit defeat, whoa, that's tough. Especially when you've got a bunch of wins under your belt, it becomes even more tough. So that's sometimes you double down, you believe, and then you're like, and you've got everyone around you screaming at you, what are you doing? This is stupid. This isn't going to work. And you're like, nope, you're a non-believer. I will not listen to you. I'm going to keep going, keep doing with what I do best. And then you get a shit sandwich served to you, and you're like, oh, you guys told me this was gonna happen, didn't you? And that's when they go, yep, but you didn't listen to us. And whatever, it happens. You let that failure, it's water under the bridge, and you move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. It leads into the importance of having a supportive spouse, because the woman I'm with now has been my rock. So I've really struggled, especially in the beginning financially. I left my job and was doing this full time, and some months were really horrible for months on end even. And I said, I'm getting a job. So 4 different times over the last, I guess, 4.5 years, she's talked me out of going to get a job. I actually took a job as a fitness director for a gym over here. And she said, are you fucking crazy? You cannot go take that job. You cannot take a step backwards now. You're too close. You're impacting too many men's lives. Do not take that job. And I mean, I had the job. It was mine. Mm-hmm. And so having somebody like that when you're going through what we're going through as online entrepreneurs is, in my opinion, 100% critical. You have a wife or a spouse that's like, you need to make more money for us because we're not cutting it, and they're riding your ass and not being that person that you need them to be, and that's a certain mindset, then you're screwed.
This is something that I would implore you to think about, not just for yourself, but anyone that's listening. If you do something well, you should be fucking paid for it. And if you do it really well, you should continue to be compensated. There is nothing wrong with getting paid for what you're doing. There's nothing wrong with getting paid really well for what you're doing. If you have a men's group where guys are paying $20 a month or $100 a month, that is dirt fucking cheap. There are groups out there where you pay $20,000 a year to join. I know. Legends is that way. Don't even email me if you think that that's something cool, if you can't stomach a $20,000 bill a year. But you know what? For those guys, I make them millions. And that is a cost of an investment. So if you have a men's group, if what you're doing, if it costs them, $50 a month, and it makes them that much more, if it makes them 10 times that, then that is absolutely worth joining, and they should support you. So if there's anybody that's out there that's listening, that's part of Steven's community, if you want and need the support, you should support Steven. It's clear that that the value is there, and Steven may be a little reticent to ask for it, but you should support the things that are important to you. And if you're listening to this podcast, if you're part of his group, support the man. Like, this is absolutely something I think that's critical for everyone getting what they're looking for. And then, Steven, from a pivot perspective, it's okay to pivot. If the message is, if it is falling on deaf ears, or if it's the audience is not quite tuned right, then you can keep making some adjustments. You can keep tweaking, and you'll find that right audience. It'll be amazing. You literally, I kid you not, I just did my event last week. So I've got this trade show I do. It's called the Online Seller Summit. I bring in 500 7-figure, 8-figure, and 9-figure companies. And then I've got my mastermind, which is just a smaller group of those same demographics. I poured so much heart and soul and love and affection into the event. I literally was in tears on Wednesday. Like, in the morning, wasn't up on stage, but the morning after the main event, I was so emotionally raw and elated and drained, and just I put so much into it that I was listening to the Gladiator soundtrack. I was trying to find some good music to play for the mastermind as they all came in, and it brought me to tears. And it just, this flood of emotion. And like, as a guy, the first thing I'm thinking about is, I'm not supposed to cry. I need to man up. Bullshit. We have emotions. In fact, as little boys, we're just as emotional as little girls. And then we stomp out that emotion. We teach our little boys, don't be emotional, don't cry, don't show fear, don't, like, all that sort of stuff, and then we desensitize ourselves. And then we're 30 years old, 35 years old, and we've been programmed to not show emotion, and our wife takes our kids and goes to Texas because she can't relate to us, because she never sees any emotion out of us, and she doesn't want to be around us anymore. That's the fucked up way of living right now.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. It's, still something that we're struggling with. Even me, or, and I can't speak for you, but, I think we're probably a little more in touch with, our emotions, and we're more open-minded to that stuff. But, part of my groups, there's a good portion of these guys that I don't ever would imagine would be okay even admitting that they've broken down and cried. And that's just, part of, what we've been conditioned to do. But I even struggle with it now because, I'm in a relationship with somebody that's very type A, very results driven, and isn't an overly emotional person. So I'm more hesitant, even though I know this isn't healthy for the relationship, if I feel sad, but on the other side, I'm very open with my kids. My 10-year-old and I are extremely close, and every Sunday night when she has to go back to her mother's house, she sits with me and she's upset. And she asked me the other night, Dad, when I'm gone, do you cry? Point blank. And I said, sometimes. I mean, sometimes I do. And it's not to make her feel bad, and I make sure she understands that, because I don't want her feeling bad, because she does. But to understand it's okay, when you miss somebody, and it's okay. It's okay for your dad to cry, So, it's just, one of those things.
I'm in the same situation. My wife is very type A. She very tomboyish. She's got very masculine tendencies, and I love that. I love that about her. Like, that was an absolute draw. Like, I wanted a partner in life that we can go whitewater rafting together. We can go motorcycling together. We can do all of this cool boy shit together. Like, I like doing that sort of stuff. The idea of having a spouse that I'm waiting 45 minutes for her to, get her shoes on and put her makeup on and that sort of stuff, like, that wasn't very appealing to me early on. And so, I think I encouraged a lot of that. But what's actually been really cool too is, as she's gotten older, she's also gotten more confident too, and spending time developing more of her feminine energy, and spending more time on, being selective about her clothing, instead of just, grabbing jeans and a shirt, being, taking care of herself in a little bit different way. And I'm older too now, and I appreciate that, and that's exciting. Like, that's really cool. But in the sharing component, what I was getting to is, it's tough. Like, when you're the patriarch, and that's got a lot of negative connotation about it, but I'm just going to call bullshit on all of that. It's, I think men will find the most happiness when they have taken the lead, or are taking the lead in providing for their family and protecting their family. And I think that, by and large, women are okay with men taking the lead. Like, they want to have a say in it. They want to be a partner in it. They don't want to just be bowled over, rolled over. Like, they want to have a part of that. But there's not a single woman, I think, out there that would disagree that they would love to be around a partner who takes the initiative, who has confidence, and who's willing to go the extra 9 yards. So in my relationship with my spouse, it's very similar. It's that has created a dynamic that is difficult for me to share my emotions and to share my feeling, because that type A female, from what I see, they will sometimes take that, and it doesn't look good for you. Let's just leave it that way. So you kind of have to pick your battles on to when to be emotional about stuff, because type A women will tend to want to take charge when they're around a submissive man. And then there's the mommy effect that happens. Now you're not a spouse, she's mommy. And there's no better way to kill intimacy in a relationship than for your spouse to be your mommy. And they don't want that. But if you leave a vulnerable space out there for too long, they will step in and fill that void with leadership. And now you're in the mommy-son syndrome. And that's a bad syndrome to be in when you're in a relationship with somebody. And that's happening a lot right now. There is a huge population of very passive and very submissive men, very beta men that don't take charge in their relationships, and the women are running the relationships. And some of the women like that. They think they like that. But I know Jordan B. Peterson's done a lot of research on type A women that eventually get into their 30s and they don't have anybody to date anymore. They're starting to lose, they're starting to hit that wall of, physicality where, their bodies are starting to break down. The biological clock is ticking, so they're starting to think about children. And for many of those women, they're having a really tough time finding partners. And for guys that are out there that are locked into marriages with really type A women that are bossing them around and being a mommy to them, that's a shit relationship to be in. And unfortunately, there's not an easy way out of that one other than having a real serious conversation and really stepping into taking the lead. You don't ask for it; you have to take it. And that could destroy the marriage because your partner may not necessarily be emotionally mature enough to accept that dynamic change. But the only alternative is you sit and you suffer for the rest of that marriage. And if there's children around, they get that splash damage as well through that whole period of time too. That's a real bad place to be. And unfortunately, I have friends in that place. I know a lot of people in that place, and it sucks. It sucks as a friend to watch it. It sucks for times I've been in that too, where, I've been more passive and my spouse has stepped into that leadership role, and then she's mommying me, and that ain't sexy. It's not sexy for her. It's not sexy for me. It does not help the relationship.
Well, you just described my marriage, 8.5 years of that. I love this topic. We could go super deep on it. I'm sure. I mean, this is a big topic, but I wanted to ask you one more thing, and this is something that I feel extremely strongly about. I mean, I read that you had written something and basically you said, taking care of yourself first, and how important that is, because if you're not in good shape or you're not feeling good about yourself, you won't be of service to anybody else. And so this is the thing that I teach in my groups is, if you're not putting yourself first, you can't be the best father, husband, employee, business owner, friend, whatever, as you can be. And that's what guys do, right? We put ourselves last. Brother Martyr, I did that for 8.5 years in a marriage. I put everything first. I was dead last, and I suffered greatly on so many levels. And so instead of looking at it like this is a selfish thing, it's the exact opposite. It's selfish not to take care of yourself first because you're better in every part of your life when you do.
Yep, absolutely. And I literally had this conversation with my 5-year-old and 9-year-old 2 days ago. And I had an argument with my wife about this 3 days ago. So I absolutely believe this, and I'm not apologetic to my wife about it. I'm number one. I am number one. And I have to be, because I am just the absolute most rotten person to be around when I put myself last. And if I can't go to the gym, if I can't spend some time doing some meditation, if I can't set myself up for success, I will be nothing but a failure. And no one's going to set me up for success but myself. Like, there's not someone that's going to change my mental state. There's not someone who's going to, that's going to do curls for me. There's no one who's going to sit me down in a sensory deprivation float tank, which I've never done before, but it's fucking awesome. I did for the first time this Saturday. Spent 2 hours in the dark, just letting my mind wander and breathing and thinking. It went by in like 30 seconds. It felt like it was amazing. I liked it so much. I'm buying a subscription to the place. I'm going to go back every month and do it. But if I don't do this work, no one will. And no one can. So it's like not even who will. No, they can't do it. So if you're not doing it for yourself, it doesn't get done. And then you're left in a position where you're passive aggressive. You're fighting for control of different things that don't matter. You're picking battles about shit that doesn't matter either. You have to spend some time. If you're not willing to work on yourself and spend time taking care of yourself, then you're not giving your best self to everybody else.
That's exactly right. And I appreciate your honesty, because I don't think enough of us would admit that. You may think it, but to actually say I'm number one, it's a hard thing to say. Like, well, I have kids, and they're the most important. Well, of course, they're the most important thing in your life, but this is not what we're talking about. So, yeah, extremely important point.
Got into a fight with my wife over it. She's like, and her point, I see her point, and she's like, well, it's not so much that you're number one, but your business is also number one too. And my response to that is, but of course, because that's a part of my existence. Like my individual contribution to the world is based on to provide and protect. Like that's what it is for me to be a man. So if you tell me that I need to put business last, sweetie, you married me as an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, 15 or 18 years. I'm not changing. Like you knew what you got into when you got into this. And I'm sorry that you want to be before business, but you're looking at it wrong. Me taking care of myself and then, working on the business and working on providing for us and for the boys, that is my job. Like that's my purpose on earth. So if you look at it saying that you should be in front of that, well, you are the direct focus of that. And the boys too. So it's not an either or, it's an and. Like so yes, that's how it works, but you also get the benefit of that. And I think the point she's really trying to make is I need to spend more time with her. And I think that goes away when I do. And I've been through a brutal stretch. This last 6 weeks, I've had this huge conference and then this mastermind, and I've got like 4 businesses. So I stretched myself a little too thin. So now I'm this event is wrapped up for a year, and I've got a ton of time. So I'm doing more to spend more time with them. And we vacation. Like we only started vacationing as a family like a year ago. And now we go out. We did 2 weeks a year. We'll do 2 weeks a year this year. My goal next year is 4 weeks. We're going down to Cabo for 2 weeks at that timeshare, and then going on 2 cruises. And the cruises are just going to be her and I. And like there'll be like some work people around. Like one is a kind of a cruise I'm semi-organizing called the Sellers Cruise, which is anyone who sells online, like Amazon, eBay, dropship on their own platform, whatever. This is a vacation with other online sellers. So we've got 50 cabins that will be a lot of people that come to my events are going to go to and, bring their families and bring their kids and that sort of stuff, because it's that's what you can do on cruises. So I'm trying to establish, personally for myself that opportunity to spend more time with my family, give them a little bit of time too to see, kind of like go to what's it called, like take your dad to work day or take your son to work day sort of thing. Like I want them to come and experience some of that as well. And so my goal next year is those 2 vacations. One is just my wife and I. One is, it's kind of a work vacation for her, and she's also a copywriter, so she's in the internet marketing space and helps people with their sales pages and landing pages and that sort of stuff. So it makes sense there too. And then we do two family trips where either one of those is just us, the family, and one of those could be like us and a dear friend, like something like that. So that's my goal for next year, because I do have a pretty unhealthy balance sometimes of work, and she doesn't mind reminding me. But you know what? I'd rather she remind me than to just take the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man, this has been awesome. I've loved this conversation. So where do you want people to learn more about you and what you're up to? You
can go to natelind.com. And you can also message me through that as well. If you scroll to the bottom, if you've got a question or something, you can message me there. The big thing that I've got going on is Sellers Cruise. It's sellerscruise.com. And it's an event May 4th through 11th in 2019 that's open to anybody who sells things online. Honestly, I don't care if you're not. Like, if you've heard something that I said and you want to come and hang out with, with me and other people who sell stuff online, if you're thinking about, a side hustle, doing something like that, this is pretty inclusive. I'm not formally running it. I just found a travel agent, and they do these group cruises. We're going to do some masterminds on the ship as well. That's kind of, one of the things I like facilitating. So we'll go through and like, who are you and what's your superpower and what's your kryptonite? What are you looking to get out of the cruise? Who do you want to connect with? Like that sort of stuff. And then we'll workshop some people's challenges that are already selling stuff online. And you can, feel free to observe or jump in the hot seat or, however that kind of works. So that's kind of the next public thing that I got going on.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. Actually, you told me a little bit about it before we started recording, and started thinking about it. I think that'll be a blast, man.
It's super cool. I mean, getting together with with 100 or 200 other people that are doing kind of what you're doing. If you're in the selling online space, then I mean it's those relationships that you get to build when you're hopping around the islands together, and people are still going to be working. The number one concern is like, oh man, doesn't the cruise ship have like shitty Wi-Fi? Well, it's probably not going to be gigabit up and gigabit down, but they do have an unlimited wireless package. It's the MSC side. It's almost a brand new ship. It's only like a year and a half old, and so there is good internet. So you can still, if you work remote or you're able to do something like that, or if you've got a laptop business like a lot of online entrepreneurs, you can bring your business with you on a laptop. Then that's a great time for you. Or otherwise, just take the vacation and go surround yourself with success. That's the thing that I've got a big fascination of is other people who are successful. Spending time being around them helps me feel more confident about what I can then also achieve, and that helps me break out of my shell and try projects that maybe I wouldn't be so ambitious to do on my own. And I keep putting myself into positions where I'm with people that are more successful than me because I want to be more successful as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been awesome, man. I appreciate your time. Even before we started recording, we talked quite a bit, and you shared some just awesome stuff with me. So, I'm very grateful for your time today, and definitely we'll keep in touch.
You're welcome. Anytime I can come back on and spread the word or share some thoughts, I'd be happy to.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Basecamp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.